Welcome to Get and Keep Biz, a video learning series. Today we'll be talking about market segmentation. One of your favorite topics, or soon will be. Segmentation gives the marketers, we learned earlier, a clear picture of how things work, how things come together. The decisions are not always clear cut. That's the problem. So we try to break up this marketplace into meaningful segments that we can really have a differential advantage. And the challenge becomes that we always have to remember the aim of segmentation. And that is essentially that we want to break into groups that are clearly different from each other, but show a great deal of homogeneity. That way they actually compete within side by side with other products and services so that the consumer can see the difference. That's what really matters here. So marketers must remember that market segments are not real, correct, incorrect, or unchanging. They're just the opposite. Customers do not have market segment rules to follow. They simply are free agents that make choices on their own. Let's look at this particular situation for a second. The narrower we define a segment, the better we are prepared to address the needs of the customers in that segment. Think about Tesla, very narrow, and the needs are very specific. And then we look at the other end and compare that to it. We're really trying to offset the differences. In other words, Teslas cost more, but if you get substantially greater value, as we learned in earlier lessons, then we're willing to pay for that product, and there will be, in fact, a narrower market that might be more profitable as well. The segments hinge on two things: customer needs and observable descriptors. Sure, there are other things, other ways we can segment, but these are critical: customer needs and observable descriptors. That way, the marketer can actually identify the market that they choose to serve. Think about this young lady. She is maybe a person that's seeking an active lifestyle, her needs. She lives in Hawaii, her geography. So she's a prospect for a surfboard, right? Of course. Let's look at the pain market with respect to this segmentation of broad to narrow. In the pain market, we're basically talking about something like analgesics, Bayer, Tylenol, Anacin, Advil, and so forth. And we're looking at it at various levels: market segments, customer segments. And this gives us the breakdown further from that the market segments are prototypical profiles, the prototype, the way that we might identify it. And then the customer segments are based on those needs and wants, the selection set, and the evaluation criteria. Broad, narrow. That's what we really come down to. So we look at three kinds of maladies that might be painful, and that would be fever, headache, pain, and inflammation. That would be a first broad cut from broad to narrow. We would look at headache, pain, and we'd say, okay, how does that break down? Well, there's general headache pain. There's that comes through a migraine, which is much more intense. And then tension, which is just everyday grinding that causes us to have a noggin that's aching. So what we try to understand is, how do we know? Well, we use research, don't we? Market is fever, headache, inflammation. The customer set, general migraine, tension. And the evaluation, effectiveness versus gentle. You understand what I'm saying here? If the overall market is about this fever, headache, inflammation issue, and our customer set really breaks down to three possibilities: general, migraine, and tension, and then the evaluation is effective or generalist, we now have the parameters to determine what segments we actually want to serve based on those criteria. This is all coming together, I hope, for you. And essentially, we can apply this now to the pizza market. Let's assume that you open a pizza parlor that offers traditional eat-in thin crust. But some people like their pizza delivered. So you have a dine-in segment, and maybe it's 25%. Probably not that high these days. They're pretty favorably disposed at the moment. And then there's delivery, which is the big part of the marketplace. And that might be a broad way to look at all pizza. Then we'd look at dine-in and sub-segment that to buffet and gourmet, and then we would try to understand how the dine-in might break out with respect to customer needs. So we have broad categories: buffet, gourmet, and then we have the two broadest categories, delivery and eat-in, and then we have over on the left there various kinds of attributes: quality ingredients, convenience, social, economical, beer, wine. And as we see, we rank these things based on surveys with customers, and we start to understand what do people want and what do they want in a particular segment. That gives us some identity as to how we might approach and attack the market and get those folks that telling them what we deliver and delivering what we tell. That is the winning combination for successful segmentation. But let's add one more in here. Let's say the gourmet actually breaks into something called bistro, which kind of clobbers the pizza market a little bit and moves into this broader kind of segment of offerings. We would see here that basically agreement across the board, 1, 1, 6, 6, whoops, a bit of a change there in the social aspects and with respect to variety and quantity. So in a bistro, variety and quantity is higher. And in a typical social getaway for a gourmet, then that social becomes a little bit higher. Otherwise, everything else lines up. But we have a differentiation within the subsegment market basically on the purpose, the social getaway aspect, and basically the variety and quantity. Bistro, very important. Quality ingredients be the number one thing that we look for. And the number two things, beer, wine makes the meal better. You better have it or you won't be able to compete. That's really what that comes down to, isn't it? Then there's that group in the middle. And that's really kind of the point at which we differentiate those two subsegments in a very, very subtle kind of a way. Use research to do that. That's the way that works, and that's the way that plays out. So if we look at how we might break up, segment the market, characteristics of the customer would be one of those things. Another one would be benefits sought. Another one would be purchasing behaviors, and then the cohort analysis. So let's take a little bit of a look at that. Here would be the idea of dealing with segments. And this is a little bit more complex, but I want you to study the deck when you get a chance. Because what we see there on the left are beauty, confidence, economy, health. Those are the attributes that people might line up with. And then horizontally, we see the age-based market segment. So we're segmenting based on age here and benefits sought, those two components. And if you see the 30 to 39 group, number one is beauty. They want beauty. And number one for the youthfulness down there would really be falling into the 40 to 65. When you're young, you don't need that. But when you're older, you want to be youthful. Okay, you get it? Status becomes very important for the very young group, 14 to 18. Segmenting personal care shoppers, this is kind of interesting. If we look at two components of browsing versus buying, this is a way people would actually buy the product. Over on the upper left, information seekers represent 28% of the market. And the smallest part of the market are traditionalists. They virtually don't exist because they are not shopping online and so forth. Online enthusiasts would represent the second smallest, and that would be folks that are just online buyers, period. But the creatures of habit typically buy online for replenishment, know what they want and order it, value convenience, low prices, and free shipping. That becomes the large segment of the marketplace based on the two criteria of browsing and buying with respect to the web. Cohort analysis, it gives us a chance to break up folks by age, and age really matters when it comes to understanding the generation with which you identify. We find that certain generations have certain characteristics that are common. And if we think about the timeline of birth from 1915 up to the present, we would say that there are many different cohorts in here. And they basically are based on this idea of when they came to age and what their current age is. So that marketers have a chance to say, okay, are we really looking for somebody that's 51 to 61, the second boom, if you will? Or are we looking for Generation Y, which was born in 1977 to 1998? They came of age in 95 to 2015, and the current age is 18 to 39. Those are important because they give us a chance to understand why this millennial generation is so important, why Generation Y and digital natives, other names for these folks, matter. Generation Y's likes free content, telecommuting, everything social. That's really what it comes down to. Wireless and mobile today, and the right fit. Those are the things that are really find out that particular cohort really demands and enjoys and expects in products. And we also find that their dislikes are anonymous mass marketing, not keen on that. Restricted access. They don't want to be blocked out from anything. They don't like the beaten path. And those are the kinds of things that we generally ascribe to Generation Y buyers or millennials. Segmentation review. Segmentation is an essential part of marketing because it provides the marketer a revealing look into the market. The tasks are segmenting the market, are deciding which segments to target, and develop a market segment strategy and positioning. So that's highly dependent on two elements of activity, the creative analysis that we talked about in the previous section, and using that creativity and analysis to make informed decisions. Useful segments criteria: differentiated, identifiable, those big two, and then accessible, appropriate, size, measurable, and stable. Differentiated, identifiable, accessible, appropriate size, measurable, and stable. That is the big part of it. Here's the review. We've kind of gone over that. I'll let you look at that on the deck. Next up, we will be discussing some more important things such as positioning, the way marketers attempt to create a distinct impression in the customer's mind. We may do the positioning. No. We actually try to create the position that a consumer will find. The customer does the positioning. More later.